Hello, Vinay Udiawar, research scientist at the Australian Institute of Marine Science, specializing in threatened species and megafauna.
What is the relationship like between scientists and fishers?
So historically, there has been a lot of there's been a lot of contention between scientists and commercial fishing.
Look, I can't speak for everybody else. I'd say in some places there's people that don't trust scientists, don't want them on their boat.
There is this concern that, fishers are frightened that, if any information they provide about their practices can be used against them and can have an impact such as, reducing the number of licences in the fishery or closing the fishery and therefore having an impact on their livelihoods.
I'm Catherine Winchester. I'm the CEO at the Northern Territory Seafood Council. In the last 50 years, we've gone from over 100 licences down to 14 licences today in the Barramundi fishery.
There is only about 5% of the coastline that's fishable for barramundi and threadfin salmon, so any loss is a big loss.
Increasingly, for fisheries to continue, we need to prove that we're not having any detriment on protected species. And sawfish are these beautiful animals that have this really long rostrum with the teeth coming out, which is almost like a chainsaw. And so that with a gill net from the Barramundi fishery or the offshore net and line fishery is a gear that the fishermen would report that the sawfish would get entangled in. But no one really understood what are the populations of sawfish like in the Northern Territory. We know that globally populations of sawfish are in decline, and the Northern Territory has 4 out of the 5 species of sawfish in the whole world.
We know comparatively less about a lot of the sawfish populations here than we do in other parts of the world and other parts of Australia.
I would often hear from the fishers that they would interact with these species and that there's plenty of them out there, but we know that there's information gaps from a science perspective. So I picked up the phone to the Australian Institute of Marine Sciences as to how might we set about a project to help fill some of those knowledge gaps.
The primary goal for this project was to try and quantify and qualify fisher knowledge to help fill ecological gaps in our knowledge of sawfish.
When you look at the science behind and understanding some of the protected species we have here in the Territory, there isn't the research or the science hasn't been done. But the fishermen on the water who've been out there since the 1960s and 70s have seen them on a regular basis. So I guess that's where we thought, well, how can we take that knowledge from the fishers and bring it together with the scientists?
The one thing that scientists aren't good at is often, natural scientists like myself, is talking to fishermen that have this wealth of knowledge and capturing that. And because that wasn't my field of expertise, we brought in an expert.
My name's Natasha Stacey and I'm Professor of Communities and Livelihoods at Charles Darwin University. So the role of the project was to firstly source some volunteer professional fishers to share their knowledge with us about interactions with these particular species of concern. Globally, it's been recognised now that fishers hold a wealth of knowledge due to their time at sea and their, in many cases, 30, 40 years of engaging in fishing-based livelihoods.
So we sat down and constructed a few questions that we thought that might be useful to try and extract information or trying to get fishers to talk about their experiences.
We weren't sure how the fishermen would respond to being interviewed by a scientist or interviewed by a social scientist to formally capture their knowledge.
There's often a situation where fishers can feel reluctant about participating in research projects like this because they're concerned that information they provide might be used against them.
The point of frustration for them was that, look, we see these things all the time, we know where they are, there's plenty of them over there, we don't go fishing there anymore. The populations are healthy, what's everyone going on about? And we would explain to them that, well, actually, it's not that easy to capture them, and the knowledge about them is very low, so we need your help.
My name's Peter Manning and I've been part of the fishing industry since about 1978. I was contacted by the Seafood Council and asked if I'd participate. Dealing with a scientist was really good. They made me feel comfortable, they gave me all the information I needed, then I could give them back what I knew.
Like, for example, when it was low tide, there'd be a big sandbar there.
I think for a lot of the fishermen, no one had actually asked them to tell their story, to sit down one-on-one and just to ask them about their career, ask them about what fisheries they'd been operating in, and then to talk about these species directly. Some will come in, oh, I'm not sure why you want to speak to me, but as soon as we asked some of the questions about them, the knowledge and the information was just flowing.
But it was fascinating to see how interested the fishers were about their interactions. Speaking more and more with them, you could see their enthusiasm of trying to recollect their interactions.
We did 16 interviews of current and former fishers, and I think it was over 4 decades of knowledge that we managed to capture.
The extent of the fisher knowledge that was shared with us in that first interview was just incredible.
Firmer teeth ones we used to see a fair bit of.
But they could recall very well instances from, decades ago where they had encountered particular species at particular times of the year in particular locations.
Coming in and just relating to my experience over the years in the different areas I fished. Sometimes there'd be lots and lots along the mudflats where we fished, and other times there'd be absolutely none. So they used to come in for different tides and different moon phases.
They were a huge success from the perspective of there was areas where there was common ground.
The interview questions and the outputs from the interviews were really important because they helped us identify specific locations.
So if 5 fishermen all drew in the same bay, that's an area where you'll find that species, then that would indicate that's probably a good area to go have a look at.
Then that information was summarised and then used for the fieldwork component of the project.
So we identified 2 key areas for fieldwork, and that was based on the maps that the fishermen had shared with us, their knowledge.
That process gave us a really good understanding of certain locations where we needed to focus all our field efforts to maximize our chances of catching and tagging sawfish.
So the boats from a project perspective were purely about deliberately going to these places based on the fishers' knowledge to deliberately catch sawfish and get a satellite tag on them. When we took the scientists down to the commercial fishing boat to introduce the scientists to the fishers before they headed off on their field trip, I know the scientists were really nervous.
With any sort of project, you're getting to know the crew, you're getting to know everybody on the team, and it took a couple of hours or even a day to meld together and work as a team.
They went out in October in 2022 and 2023, which is at the end of the Barramundi professional fishing season. Very, very hot conditions, and it would have been very hard work.
It was great to have a crew that was so dedicated in what they were doing, and they were out on the boat with us every single time. They didn't complain about the weather or long hours on the water. It was fascinating. It was great. Yeah.
Sitting back in Darwood when the boats were out there was just like every day I'm like, have we got one yet? Have we got one yet? And eventually we did. So the first field trip was such an excitement to hear that we've got a sawfish, we've got a 2.5 metre sawfish tagged.
It's the first time we put mini pads or this kind of satellite tags on sawfish, so exciting.
We did get to successfully release 6 tags on 6 adult sawfish.
Well done, guys. Good quality. Thanks, guys. That's epic.
All reports from the boat, it was just like one big happy family.
Towards the end of the trip, it was great. We weren't as intimidated by them, and they weren't as intimidated by us. So we actually ended up working like a really well-oiled machine.
It feels great to, after a couple of years and some COVID hiccups, to be able to share with a range of people, here's what we set out to do. It was a success.
This was a really important project because the first time that fisher knowledge has been considered.
Professional fishers are eyes on the water. They're a source of data, they're a source of knowledge.
It's a really, really rich source of nuanced data that scientists often don't have access to.
We've got to embrace research much more. Researchers are looking for projects. We've got lots of problems and challenges. It's a great opportunity to put two brains and two different perspectives together to come up with things that we might not have thought of.
Fisher experience involvement in ecological surveys and tagging enhances the success where us as scientists are targeting rare animals. Personally, for me, it was a really, really great project to learn how valuable collaboration is.
Because this project was run through the Northern Territory Seafood Council, they enabled this two-way conversation between fishers and the scientists that after the life of this project has blossomed into other projects with commercial fishers collaborating with other scientists to collect more information on sawfish and threatened species. Yeah.
The fishing industry should definitely not be scared of scientists.
Generally, we need to be more open with the scientists, fisheries, and anybody that can do the work to make sure that we can keep our fishery going.
This project kind of showed that there really should be a two-way exchange with the fishing industry, not only for them to have a say in how this kind of work happens, but also have a say in the outcomes of this kind of work, and not including fishers in those studies or in those outcomes is very detrimental to both the scientists and the fishing industry.
This project is so important for industry to demonstrate how it can contribute to the conservation of protected species.
This is probably one of the first times in the Northern Territory where such a project like this has taken place, where we have engaged social science and biological science methodologies to come together to look at a particular problem. It's been a great privilege to be involved in the project, and hoping that the lessons that we've generated from this project can be shared and incorporated into projects in the future.
Without the scientists collaborating with scientists, we really can't move forward on a lot of the fisheries because we don't know a lot about all of them. So the more information we get from science, the more we'll know about the actual fishery, the stocks, and we'll know that in the future we'll have good fisheries.
Collaboration definitely is the way that we really should be doing this kind of science to have an impact on the ground.
We need to make sure that everyone's contributing to science, and that's what we're aiming for.